From Africa's entrepreneurial battleground comes Founders Battlefield, where unfiltered stories reveal the real price of chasing big dreams. In episode 5, The Hustle Delusion, host Michael Anthony Macharia, a tech founder who scaled and stumbled through burnout, reflects on when hard work becomes harmful and why founders must choose clarity over chaos. He's joined by Suzie Wokabi, beauty industry pioneer, who shares how saying yes to everything nearly cost her everything and how reclaiming space changed her path. Kariuki, strategist and systems architect, unpacks how hustle culture tricks founders into firefighting instead of designing freedom. George Ikua, a serial entrepreneur, opens up on identity, exhaustion, and the fear behind constant motion. Together, they confront the myth of hustle, asking when to push, when to pause, and when to pivot. Challenge the noise, reclaim your rhythm, let Founders Battlefield guide your next move in the arena of bold entrepreneurship.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this episode. It's great to be here again with Founders Battlefield. It's been an interesting journey. Today we are shooting our fifth episode, which are very interesting entrepreneurs. And thanks for the feedback we've been receiving. We've had interesting feedback, very, very great recommendations. We've been given areas where we need to optimize our show. But again, we are here for you. Our vision remains, we don't give descriptive solutions, but it's for you as an audience to be able to take what you learn from the show and execute it in your own life as an entrepreneur or an upcoming entrepreneur. Today, we have our fifth episode talks about the hustle delusion. We are a hustler nation, naturally, as you understand, but sometimes not all hustles lead to output. Sometimes we are too busy. We wake up in the morning and find we are extremely busy, but we keep asking, are we creating incremental value? Or are we just living to sustain ourselves? So today's conversation, the hustle, the delusion, is we ask ourselves, when hard work isn't enough, does hard work really pay, or is it incremental hard work, or is it being smart? But also today in an age where artificial intelligence, AI, you've got a whole new workforce, you've got a whole new way of thinking. The world has become almost flat. How do you think? How do you execute? How do you scale? I'm Mike Macharia. I'm the founder of two businesses, of multiple businesses in healthcare and in technology. And I'm here with great entrepreneurs, and I'm happy to be the host. With me today, and I start from that side. I would like to start ladies only, maybe, but I'll go. Let me go clockwise. I think they say I don't want to tempt fate. Let me go clockwise. The first person I have with me here is George Ikua. George has to tell me why it took him significant amount of persuasion and effort. Yet when I meet him socially, he holds me down for 4 hours in conversations. So I told him, enough. It's time we shared our conversations with others. So George, welcome.
Thank you. Do I answer now?
No, I'll introduce you, but we'll come back to you, George. This is George. You can see him here. The next great person, George, you'll speak. Soon we're going to be with you. The next, an amazing person is Suzie Wokabi, who, to be honest, I reached out to Suzie, and within 10 minutes, we had an alignment of why we need to do this. So you can see the difference in terms of, I think women are taking the leadership role in terms of wanting to say their stories. So Suzie just told me, Mike, to Kondani. So Suzie, I really appreciate you coming. Thanks a lot for that. And I want to get more women stepping up in this. So Suzie.
Thank you.
Thanks to have you here. And then finally, we have a good friend of mine, Kaboro Kariuki, who I've known for many years in the technology industry. His story is also very interesting, having gone through trials and tribulations, but he's here with us. You can see he's comfortable. He's also going to tell us how things are going. So, Kariuki.
Glad to be here.
Nice to have you here.
Yeah.
So today's conversation, and as I move into our usual structure of this conversation, what we do, we lay the foundation of our conversation. And we let our great people, our great founders, we call them guys in the arena. These are people who chose to come and see the stories. First, let's understand what it takes to be here. To be here, it means mentally, you've already accepted that you're going to share your story. So it's already a win mentally. Number two, you've also agreed that you need to share your story for the next generation of entrepreneurs, not to go through this. So I really give you guys kudos for being the kind of people who step up and have this conversation. Whether good or bad, we've all gone through this conversation. Recently, I featured other entrepreneurs who had significant backlash, and I said, we're going to hold on, because it's his position to say his story. But if he doesn't say his story, it's his, you're given a stage. You say what you need to say. So today is, again, our conversation. People are going to watch who you don't know, but you could be making a difference in somebody's life, who somebody seated somewhere, constantly going, churning nothing, but doing a lot of work that doesn't yield anything. So as we then start, would like to start with George. Let us lay the foundation. George, really, it's great to have you here.
Yes.
Please do justice to the show as you do it when I meet you socially, okay? So over to you, George. George, welcome, and Kaboro, welcome, and Suzie, welcome. So George, over to you. Let's lay the foundation. When I sent you this topic, I think you guys selected this topic. We have many topics. We've got 36 or 37 more, 35 more topics to do coming up. So why did you choose this topic? And why did you choose to show up today?
I think, so I'm in the middle of Hustle 9 or something like that. So I've had this very interesting entrepreneurial journey where I've been through a cycle of businesses, but it took me a very long time to realize, like, so I started, when we met, my first business was a CRM. If you remember, I used to do a CRM.
You tried to sell me?
Yes.
I even gave you business.
Yes. What he's calling business is our bill here. Don't listen to him. But he gave me a chance, and I remember it was through you that then we got to a large telco and very many other things, and what happened is that I ran that business for 7 years, and where my things crumbled is when I lost, when I brought on people who I had not asked what they were seeing. So I was seeing a 6, they were seeing a 9. And not because of anything bad, not because that the 9 was wrong. In fact, we eventually became very good friends after that. But so the business could not handle one person seeing 6 and one person seeing 9. And instead of innovating again, and this is where I come back to the hustle story, I then pivoted away. So at every huge roadblock, what I have always done in my business is at every huge block, I reinvent in another space. And so why I chose this is that has initially led me to being, you're called a serial entrepreneur, but what you're doing is you're going up and then you start again, like that. And that, starting a business is hard. It's very, very hard. But then you get so used to the hard so that even when it's costing, you're actually even looking for more hard. So you're not used to things working. And where the space I am right now, I can say is actually my best business, because I have learned that the real thing about being business is when you're utilizing what comes naturally to you. So if I ask what are your characteristics, I'm a great orator. I can take an idea from idea to reality. What am I? I'm terrible at ops. I'm terrible at managing teams. I'm terrible at but engaging, bringing the idea, putting people together and all that. So this is the first business where we actually are just a consortium of companies, which I'm heading in one direction. So it removes me from the ops space. So what has that done? It's a series of things. So the problem with business is that you leave that way behind you. They're like children of yours that you abandoned. And you feel, I let you down. So it's almost like an embarrassment, like you have is bastard an English word? Like you have a bastard out there who you are not taking care of. And that brings shame to you as an entrepreneur. And you always say, when I get my mind to work, I will go and apologize downstream what we didn't do. And for me, when you called me, I said, man, I have this new young baby. This baby does not need distractions about those bastard children of mine out there that are abandoned. I don't need, and I was like, that is going to interrupt. And I'll be honest. Peter Ndwati, who was with you, I think episode 2 or 3, he's the one who called me. He said, George, who told you this is not going to be like the other children? What you're not seeing is that you're raising this child, this business, way better because of your first 4 mistakes. So, and he told me, just pick those 4, go tell the country. You might save people making the same 4 mistakes. And you'll even just double down on why you're doing it this way. Because for the first time when I explained to him what I was doing, and he said, now you are in your element. You remember when I met you, I cut my teeth as a software developer. But if anyone who meets me, I'm a storyteller. He's a talker. So they would say, you're very misaligned. How are you writing software and you're a talker? So half at night I was coding, during the day I was marketing. And that's how we did it. It was sales info at the time. I was selling the CRM.
Yes.
And those are the things. It's when you hit your natural state. So when you move away from, it's what we talked in the break before we came and about, it's not the opportunity. It's the opportunity to use your talent. Just because I know, like, we're making fun of somebody who can buy wine and I know a supplier, that doesn't mean you start a business. Because if it's not in your natural element to run a distribution company, you have no business being in wine business. So it's that hustle of thinking, I have to always be, how do I say, you align to the opportunity. Let opportunities align to your natural talent. Things that are not for you are not for you. And when you're in natural state, like Mike, this thing is you. Leadership, direction, big thinking. I've always known, since we're with you in Strat, that's you. You dream big, you think big, you execute big. And I think what you're doing right now is your natural element. And for me, why I'm here is to really tell the story of my bastard children who are out there looking for their father. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Hey, that is right. I like that. So today we're going to learn about your bastard.
My bastard children. I'll tell you the 4 of them. Very nice.
But we're not saying we're not going to forsake them.
We're not going to forsake them.
You're going to learn from the experience.
We're going to learn from them.
I told you you're a storyteller. It's incredible. So now we go to Suzie. Suzie, are you saying you've seen your friend here? Suzie.
My friend is too funny.
Suzie, it was great to have you, and it's great having you here. So really, let's go. Let's lay the foundation. I'm very keen to first of all, I found, just as good, I found that every day I meet entrepreneurs in this show, I'm learning more and more. It's like you're so superficial what you think you know about people. You meet them socially, but now I'm finding when I sit here, I say, my God, I never knew Suzie really.
Yeah.
So Suzie, let me get to know you.
Hi.
Yes.
Very glad to be here. This is so interesting. And like we talked before, I know this is going to be like a full therapy session. So I don't need to pay a therapist after this, I think.
No.
Delusion. Dululu is the Sululu. I never, ever would have imagined that I'm an entrepreneur. Well, ever, right? I was always going to be, employed. I call myself a beautypreneur, though, not an entrepreneur. So when I moved back home after 10 years in the US, came back home to work in the media makeup industry. So my background is in fashion and beauty. But coming back home, I didn't know, fashion was not an option. Beauty was my complete passion and love. And I was working in media makeup, very happily so, and then found a gap in the retail cosmetic space. All the products were imported and not even for us, blah, blah, blah. So I decided to make my own. You have to be delusional like that, right? Nobody, so that's why Suzie Beauty, that's the brand, is Kenya's first homegrown beauty brand, because before that, there was nothing ever made locally for us. So it's always going to be, the first brand by an African woman for the African woman. So, and why? Everyone asks. They're like, "Are you crazy? Like, why did you think you can?" And I'm like, "Because I thought I could." So that journey was its own little animal because there's no one to look to. I'm the one who like went into the forest to cut down the trees for the next batch to follow me, right? I'm only looking to what was out there, and so it was tough. But the product, for me, product is everything, right? So the product development was wonderful. Running the business, a whole nother ballgame, right? My co-founder was my husband, who at least managed some of the back end. You said your ops situation is not great. I'm zero. And then my title was CEO by force because we were two of us. So CEO and founder. And then he had his own title. So yeah, building a team from scratch and building a product line and getting the product into the market. My friend Caroline Mutoko, until today, keeps harping on about when she interviewed me one time for her station. Where was she? What radio? What? Kiss.
Kiss, yes.
Yeah. And she tried to create a lipstick line for many, many years that sort of sat on the counter, and she just couldn't imagine doing it. And I came out with, 30-something products. She's like, why? Are you mad? I'm like, but how can I create an eyeliner without, the foundation and the lipstick? And like everything has to go together. You need everything for the full face. Like, for me, just that's only what made sense. Uh-huh. They all have to. You need face, you need eyes, you need lips. How can I do lips and then send them somewhere else to buy eyes and then send them somewhere else to buy face? No, I have to, yeah. So anyway, that's part of the Dululu. Uh-huh. And yes, so put the brand in the market very successfully. So my main problem was running out of product. It's that thing of it's a good problem and a bad problem, because we're out of stock because of the uptake, and but reordering problems and investor problems and anyway, sold the brand. The brand was acquired 4 years later into running it because I was looking for stronger backing partners who came about at the end of meeting many people, and was the Flame Tree Group, who insisted on full acquisition. So for me, you talk about bastard children, it was literally, I think, like giving up my child for adoption because they can take care of the child better than I can. Huge, huge, huge decision and painful in many ways. It was a 6-month-long process, by the way. It wasn't people. And then my regular clients were like, "How can you do this to us?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not doing this for us, not to you, because the brand still is there for you. And if I didn't do that, it wouldn't exist. Like, it would have died, I would have died, like both of us." In fact, I told my husband one time around that time. We were like struggling. And I was like, you know what? If somebody tells me, those garbage trucks that pick up taka, I'm like, if you tell me go live in there for 3 months, only in there, you have to do everything in there and eat in there, and all this will disappear, I would do it. Yeah. So it was what
we call hustle dilemma. That is hustle delusion. Yes,
exactly. And so it was a deep decision to make, even for on their end, taking on a brand who they don't even know if it will work or not. And then so that's, I think, part one of the story, which I don't know if I've talked too long. Because there's still so much more to tell.
I think your pivot into you're willing to trade off the noise to be in a garbage truck. That I think summarizes a lot of problems.
To live in there.
Sometimes you wake up and say, "Hey, I think this is enough."
This is enough.
You want a place quiet.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Exactly.
And more is less.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I think less is more and more is less. Somebody just say, "Let me just do less." For bigger value.
For the sake of survival, literally, mine and the brand. And that was it. It was my ultimate decision. No one else around me had the top decision to make. So but it was the better one because.
And you're here,
and
looking
I'm
healthy, looking happier, and willing to share your story.
Yeah.
We have to deep dive.
And that is so part one.
And I hope you're willing to deep dive later on that one. Because
Definitely.
we will come back to that.
Definitely.
Mr. Kariuki.
Yes.
Tell me. Tell us here in this founders world, what's up?
Yeah, so my background is effectively almost perfectly correlated with this topic. Excuse me. Because I'm quintessentially a lazy entrepreneur. And it sounds bad, but from a fairly young age, I didn't understand. Like, my mom was very sarcastic whenever she saw you doing something pointless. And she'd ask you, why are you mark timing? So if I've read a book at home, and she sees me reading it again, she's like, is there something you didn't understand or what's going on? And then it's coupled with the fact that I have ADHD. So I've never done what I'm supposed to do. So, I left high school, went to study chemical engineering, but I was working full-time selling virtualization. When I started working on virtualization, I started thinking about entrepreneurship because the day job was boring. And it's always caused some conflict in the places where I'm working because to everyone I'm costing. Like I've historically never made an effort to look like I'm working. It seemed pointless. And so the people I'm working with have always had this frustration, which is amplified if I have better outcomes than they do. And it's not until 2015 when a friend of mine recommended a book, and it was a book on conflict that I finally understood what was going on. And the book effectively deals with a Greek mythology problem. So during the Trojan War, there was King Agamemnon, pronunciation defeats me a bit. And then you had Odysseus, Achilles was killed in battle, and Ajax. Ajax was a workhorse. He was the guy who got everything done on time. The people who make the trains run on time. Odysseus was the crafty little guy. And so when Achilles died, they needed to give Achilles' armor to somebody to honor him. And the king sort of defaulted to committee to decide who to give it to. But the core problem was Ajax was like, he's there strong as an ox in battle with his people. And Odysseus is goofing around, but Odysseus is the one who comes up with the idea of the Trojan horse. So he's the one who wins the battle. Without Odysseus, you don't win the battle. But without Ajax, you also don't win the battle. But it is easier to replace Ajax than it is to replace Odysseus. And the sort of weird way my mind has worked has always sort of given me a lot of grief, but it's also allowed me to make tremendous steps in places where other people otherwise wouldn't. So in 2012, when I was starting my first company, no one thought it was possible to sort of have automated cloud infrastructure on the continent. We were the first on the continent. It was sort of like this contrarian approach where, okay, people are saying it can't be done, but I still don't have an answer as to why not. And then you sort of focus and you get it done and you move on. The first company hit some headwinds. It was sort of the first time I was fired in my life. So it was like I worked to get myself fired from a job, which was to me a bit insane. Then the next time, the next startup, ended in equal chaos. And I remember one of the fights we had was around the approach to tech. And my then business partner was a rote person. He wanted to do the same thing over and over to lead to success. And I was the one baking pies in the sky. The only problem is my pie materialized, and that led to conflict. And then, come 2020, I started another company. But, it was sort of like just at this point, it was survival. Because at that stage, I didn't know what I had wanted to do with the rest of my life. At that point, I'd started 2 businesses. The outcomes had been problematic. I didn't feel like I had the motivation to sort of start another company with the objective to scale it. So I started it, and the whole idea was, okay, I need to pay bills. I need to survive. And next thing I knew, 5 years had passed. And now is when I'm finally thinking about the next stages of my life.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So we'll come back to that, but that's an interesting conversation in terms of how just 5 years can go.
Yeah.
5 years is a half a decade.
Yeah.
You can find yourself looping.
Yeah.
So I think interesting as you guys talk about that, it's giving me some sense of reflection, even in my own life. I think it's about how we deep dive in the next conversation. For me, the way I look at it, I think there was one day a realization. I was playing golf, and I remember, how you hit the ball into the woods. I remember playing, and there I was looking for my ball. It was lost. Okay, and I was so caught up in the ball, I never saw the ants. So the ants got into my
pants.
Into my pants. So before I knew it, in Limuru, I was removing my pants. And the ball was no longer important. Yeah. I was looking at my other assets.
The other ball.
Those assets, now I figured out, my God. So I realized, all of a sudden, I don't know, it dawned on the next hole, as I played, I thought to myself, the ball was no longer relevant. It is my other assets entwined, the ants thing. Then I figured out, my God, sometimes you could be doing something over and over, you're not realizing, you're not really moving forward. Now I came back to my life, and I remember that's a pivot I made in my life. What had happened as a technology business, I started a tech business, 7Cs. But what we do would take vendors, big vendors, some of these infrastructure vendors, software vendors, who the Bill Gates and the Larry Ellison of the world, those guys have built technology products. So they've taken time to think. And they have come to Africa and said, there must be a guy called Mike who is ambitious enough who will go and sell gospel of my product. The guy is seated somewhere in America. He doesn't even know there's a guy called Mike. So I work hard. I go and convince corporates. Some of them have thrown me out. There's Madarao here. Eventually, I close some corporates, the big ones. They start using the product. Remember, the guy there even does not even have an office in Kenya, right? I have had to train people. I go to Silicon Valley. So I'm thinking, my God, I'm moving. I'm cooking this thing. Is that correct? But when I go to Silicon Valley, I look at the buildings, the estates. I look at this guy as a campus. This guy, I'm selling his idea. He doesn't even know me. When I come to Africa, I sold this thing to, let's say, the large telco, large banks. The moment we are big enough, I've worked so hard and brought significant revenues and recognition of these brands. Those same brands come and open offices in Kenya, right? They take the employees who are hired from university, right, and hire them. Then I'm left back. I said, hey, I worked so hard. I thought I was burning. I thought I was moving. All of a sudden, somebody has chopped me, right? And now all of a sudden, I'm thinking, I'm rebuilding something from scratch. Yet I'm the one I thought I was building incremental value. It happened to me once. It happened to me twice. It happened to me 3 times. But yet, top line revenue are growing, right? But every time you grow a new brand, new guys come on board. Then I told myself, I think there has to be a point where this has to stop. I also realized customers are willing to churn away from you as quickly as possible if they find you don't bring value in the ecosystem. And for me, I think the take out of this is when I turned around to figure out the hustle was actually a delusion because I was busy. I was busy representing brands. They would call me, where haven't you trained your people? Why have you done this project like this? They hire some people. My classmates, I'm in school with them. I'm the one who is an entrepreneur. The employees of this big multinational, they're parading like they're my bosses. Where am I do? Where are you? Why aren't you doing? I said, where? If you lose this job, you'll come and work for me. Stop jokes. And it happened many times. Yeah. They lost the jobs, they came back to work for me, right? So what happened is I learned that hustle, we were building but not building anything. You're building what we call incrementally. You're trying to, then from there we moved into vertical industries, like healthcare. You say, let me now transform healthcare. But again, you still don't own a healthcare product. You go and present these large multinational companies who are extremely, I would tell them, they're extremely brutal and capitalistic. It's working for them today. If you're there and they'll need you, they'll work with you. When they don't need you, they don't need you. So again, you start realizing, so does it mean when you have a big brand name, you cannot misbehave? They misbehave as good as no brand name. They'll throw you out of the window if they don't need you. But yet you're the one who helped them get into the market. So I found, again, have I solved any problem? Yes, I've solved the problem in the short term. But if these guys were to disintermediate you out of the loop, they will remove you from the loop. Please understand that. Always remember that. So I said, now, how do I start building my own intellectual property? Because the only way to survive out of this is start building your own IP. Because if you don't build your own IP, the only way, you see, if every day I wake up and build my own IP, if every day employees come and they help me build IP, even if they leave, I've got incremental growth. Kama kujenga nyumba, unajenga one floor, hata fundi akitoka ende, even if the fundi comes and leaves, he has built for you one floor. So I've changed my mentality to say, so long as you're with me, so long as one floor has gone up, or 2 floors have gone up, you say you're leaving. I say, no problem. At least I've got 3 floors up. Because when Taj Mahal was built by people at different layers. Is that correct? So constantly is to ask yourself, are you just doing things for the sake of? Because it's like every day, if you're not, you can either be building every day, step by step, or every day you come and demolish. So every day you're not growing, because as people leave, the same floor remains as floor 1. But now it's to ask yourself as a business, am I incrementally growing? Both mentally, physically, and also based on your experiences. So that's I think, my first jump into this, realizing I was very busy, but very busy asking myself, doing what exactly? So today I'm in an IP building business. So anything I choose to do, if it's not incrementally adding value, even 1 stone, 1 block of stone, if the fundi who comes to my life doesn't add 1 stone, even if he leaves after 4 stones, at least he put 4 stones. Correct? Because sometimes you realize the guys coming in and out of your life, but the 4 stones, they keep removing stones, you're not growing. The floor remains 1 floor. So you have to ask yourself, am I growing step by step? And I think as a country, when you talk about a hustler, when we talk about being a hustler nation, we have to ask ourselves, are we building floor by floor? Are we just remaining marginally builders? We go to China, we import all of us. Are we really moving forward?
Hey, Mike, you're talking, I'm just hearing bulbs, because it's, there's a famous saying that says, falling has the delusion of flying. So when you're falling, if you look, you're in the air, you're falling, you're dropping 1,000 feet a minute. But you're in the air, you're saying, look, you're even sightseeing on your way down. That's the hustler delusion. And sometimes you have built, like, if you really critically even look at, like, your experience, like, I'll just talk about my experience. You have a delusion that everything remains constant the day you started the business. So, for example, those guys in Silicon Valley, they gave you the opportunity to resell because they didn't care if you worked or you didn't. So they're like, if you work, good enough. If you don't work, come see. And you mentioned going for a telco. And I'll tell you a story how we went in when I was doing that CRM, and we went into a large telco, convinced them how they were going to help us sell the CRM along with their data. Massive, massive project. Took us about 1.5 years camping in their thing. And until one day, someone sat and said, wait, do those numbers again? But when you are insignificant and coming, everyone was quickly to sign with you MOUs. But the minute they looked at the money itself, they're like, the same guys are the ones who kicked me out as fast as possible. So we have the delusion that everything will remain constant. 2, we don't plan. So like now you're saying you're building the IP. Build the IP along with the moat. So they say, for you to have a good marriage, you have to agree on how to divorce before you get married. So you sit, you discuss the divorce, then you get married. So as you enter these contracts with me, I'll give you a scenario. I think my bastard child, number 3, we were doing.
Do they have names?
They have names. Hey, they're very close to me. They were named after my lineage. They have Kikuyu names. So we're doing travel, and what we're doing, and I bumped into this business accidentally. What we're doing is that when Uber was trying to get into the market, they were trying to get into the corporate space, and those days. So there was a gap where the only way you could pay for corporate was using a card. Now, by law, NGOs are not allowed to own a credit card. So we took a card, build the card, and then build the NGO with 100 bob on top. Just doing nothing, just swinging it like this. So it went. Now I said, hey, now I told you flying as a fear of, you think you're flying. So what worked for one customer, we thought it would work for the next customer. And we got one big customer, a massive customer, a guy with over 10,000 employees. You are calculating if everyone chapas how many rides a month. It's like this. George is gone. He's just falling. He's not flying. Let me tell you. So they start, and then now you start. Now I'm saying this hustler mentality. Instead of sitting and de-risking the business and building a moat, what is your IP? All we did was start adding more and more and more. So what do? You pay for them, you bill for them. You're paying. You don't have money to pay. So you're raising money from people. You pay. These guys pay. The unimaginable happened. A company that size went into distress. Mm-hmm. My friend. You as in that flying, you just hear the engines go off. The lights, the seatbelts, science carbon. It unravels so fast. But anyone, had I taken the business to somebody and said, okay, critically tell me, where is the divorce coming? No one ever sat. I never sat, and that's the thing with being a hustler. The hustler is so content with the profit and the idea that he's not investigating the longevity, where the bullets are coming from. Because right now, and that's why I'm very happy to come here and share this, I tell you, sit and look at your business and say, if what would change, and if it changed, what would collapse? So that you can see them coming. So that now you stop, because we are essentially giving credit, but we are not collectors. So I don't know a thing about collection. So I should have passed this business to somebody who is a lender who knows how to collect, usually a financial institution, an MFI or something. I didn't. I'm just seeing the margin. There's like 100 bob here. The fun, now, when it's fun, when you jump out of that plane and you start falling, it feels nice. You're just coasting. And I remember, like there's a whole year, I've not gone to the office, but we are scoring profits. I've never gone to the office. I've built a dashboard. I'm watching money. Kumbe is just falling. The day it stopped, ended up in a very, very ugly scenario. And that is my child number 3. But and that's why right now, in what I'm doing, whether or not we're making significant revenues or not, every day I wake up and I ask ChatGPT, tell me what will go wrong. Every day I de-risk my business. And I make sure what I can do. And that's what I'm saying. The hustler delusion is chasing the opportunity. And you can find so many people. And then, and really, I think we don't understand the smallness of our market. So you sit, and if you sit among entrepreneurs, especially us who are in tech industry, if you sit among most entrepreneurs, they will sit and quote Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Bill Gates. Those guys are in a market you can't fathom the size of that economy. Like, Fire sells virtualization. To convince a mid-sized company in Kenya to move away from QuickBooks and pay 20,000 shillings more, is a series of board meetings. It doesn't. We don't think like that. So when you approach a market, I think what I would say is very important is that don't think you can work hard enough to create the next Facebook, the next Oracle. You have the market and the opportunity, and then there's culture. Like now, one of the things that so not paying you in Kenya has no redress. There's no redress. By the time you go to court to sue that guy, first of all, the lawyer himself, only the lawyer will make money in this whole game. By the time by the time they pay you, you'll have died in this thing. And I know, Mike, your first testament to this story, how to get back paid. So there are things that you have to look at and plan for in this cycle, like where are they going to get you, and then how do you protect yourself?
Wow, interesting. Because in one way, you've really looked at it in a very scientific, but also very practical way, which I think is interesting. Is being busy, every day being busy, chasing money, where they're going to get paid. Is being busy doing bad things.
Yes. And that they are paying.
Yeah.
It's like a bad, it's like, so you're getting rich in a bad project. And so that's a hustler delusion. So, but it's working. And the one thing, so there's a thing here which it had you done and perfected, which in an initial space has no much profit. It has a very long longevity. So for example, if you're tender chasing, right, from the government, all it takes is a cabinet secretary to be fired.
Yeah.
And your whole business model has collapsed. So you have perfected the art of talking to this guy. You know the names of his kids, you or whatever. You're always at his funeral, his gatherings, and all these other things. That guy utters a wrong statement somewhere randomly. He's fired the next day. Everything you've been calling hustling. You like the moat. There's no moat, and every day. And the mistakes I've been making is now when that moat happens, instead of coming back to innovate on this thing, the temptation of the hustler is that we need to get back quickly to profit, not to quickly fix what was. So how do we continue where we can survive the cabinet secretary being fired? It's quickly go and do another one, but you're not looking for the moat. So we don't innovate in the business. We innovate a new innovation. And you're not innovating a new innovation, you're just innovating a new way to make money.
Yeah.
We are our own cast. If you look at the guys who've really succeeded, it's people who've done something better each time over a long time.
And that's actually very interesting as we even move to Suzie or Kariuki. You know, you come from a point where you're a business to business relationship. And it's very different when you're business to consumer relationship. So I'm very keen to understand it. In a business consumer, when do you know this is BS? Is enough is enough? And when George, you said something very interesting, and my personal testimony to this is, in a B2B, is the amount of emotional engagement and investment you have with the gatekeepers. And when these gatekeepers move, you sleep in bed for 1 week, thinking, my God, what was this investment for? Now, how do I rebuild it? Is that correct? And being able to know I need to stop building my business around these gatekeepers. Because, it's easy. The hustle looks easy when you're around gatekeepers. But when the gatekeepers move, you realize, as you said, there's no moat. So what was your business really? Was it a gatekeeper business? Or what business was it? Right? And that brings now the question to Suzie. You have gone and built a business to consumer. You don't have to love the person buying your product. You love them because they're buying your product, but they don't have to love you. How have you kept yourself sane? And when do you know also in your business that you're just pushing the wind? You're just, yeah. In my native language, they say when you're cooling water with water. Have you heard that? Just emptying water from one jug. There's no value being created. They call it Korea Mai. So there's no value you're creating. You're just going around in circles. When do you know? And when your parents ask you, how is it? Hey, it's good, you're working hard. Hey, we are pushing. And that's why very few people are capable when they ask the right question. How is business? We are pushing. But what is pushing?
Wind.
We are working. We are there. What is that? Maybe I'm very curious to hear from you. What do you mean by this for you in a consumer business?
So for me, my situation was, I could even have been that gatekeeper, because the industry, my industry is what it is. It's very small. It seems large. The numbers are big, but it's very premature still compared to the international world of the beauty industry, right? So I could control a lot, right? And it was also, I struck while, what was hot?
Iron was something was
right, when people were into, my potential investors would be like, they're not going to buy your product because it's Kenyan. I'm like, they're going to buy it because it's Kenyan. So it was a whole new phase of buy Kenya, build Kenya, buy Africa, build Africa. So right time. Now, and the consumer was ready to receive. I'd also built a name for myself in the industry, right? So by the time I was saying, I'm going to make some product for us, and they knew me as a industry person, and they like, okay, whatever she says, let's buy. And by the way, that process that I've just brushed over was a 3-year long process of creating, saying, I'm going to make my own product for us. To launch was 3 years. And people are like, where is it? Where is it? For 3 years. So by the time I was launching into the market, it was eaten up, right? And then, you had talked about IP. That's...
Because in your business, there's IP.
Yes. So it's my own, right? The first thing I do, even Kipi has given me an award. I have like 4 trademarks. Why I managed to sell the business for goodish money is because they bought the trademark.
Wow.
Yeah. They bought the product and the trademark. If I didn't have the trademark, I'd have got a fraction.
So good points.
Yeah. Yeah. I've even trademarked my name.
Suzie Beauty.
Suzie Wokabi.
Okay.
Because there's people, high-profile people, who cannot use their name ever again because they put their name in the business and they can never use it. I won't say the names of the people I know. So I got...
You can even trademark your name.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Suzie
You and me, I
Wokabi
should now
has...
trademark Ask Mike.
Exactly.
Okay, but now surely.
It might be too late. You should trademark the name of this podcast.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I've lost my train of thought. We were talking about
trademark.
No. And the how do you know the B2C story? Yeah. And then for me, the consumer has always been ready, willing, able, and open. But now, when I sold the brand, I watched that start to unravel because they thought I'm not a part of it anymore, and so the customer base was very confused and I'd even find in all the shops that after the purchase, my face was pasted in all of them for them to know I'm still here, I'm still the one. So that worked. But through the years, that's also unraveled because they're like, where is she? What happened with that situation, by the way, 5 years, I had a 5-year sign-on with the new owners, and which I wanted so that I could control at least the change management and whatever, and the product. And 5 years came up during COVID, where I knew I wasn't going to continue because there was still the industry's it's still small and there's so much going on, still growing so nicely. there's so many collabos I could not do. People asking me, can we do this? Can we do this? I can't because I had a non-compete. So I couldn't do anything apart from Suzie Beauty in the industry. So those 5 years came up, and that was a very unsad, I'm not going to say happy, unsad divorce on both ends. You know, it's COVID time. They're flailing, struggling with the war and stuff because they import all sorts of raw materials for their other brands. I was in confusion of, no, I can't still just sit here petting Suzie Beauty's head, and there's so much more to do in the industry. And so we signed off, both of us, quite happily. I cried tears of happiness. And actually, the director, he asked me, he's like, why are you crying? And he's like, did you feel imprisoned? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I'm so happy to not feel that anymore. I also felt employed, you know, and as an entrepreneur, that's never a good feeling. And then thereafter, everyone's like, do another one, make more, do another brand. Fantastic. So this is where my busyness came in. Like, I'm like, okay, listen to this concept. And it's just like fantastic. When my son was 1 is when I launched Suzie Beauty. He's now 15, but so this is 2 years ago. He's in high school. I'm picking him up from school. I'm watching the girls walk out of class with lip gloss on their lips. Their eyebrows are done. Their blush on their cheeks. I'm like, why are you wearing makeup? It's 4 p.m. I don't even have makeup on. And they're like, we're allowed, you know, from year 9. I'm like, okay. Also, a lot of my friends have young daughters. Their birthday parties are no longer jumping castles. They're makeup parties and spa parties, right? I'm like, this younger generation, I need to watch them closer. So when everyone's like, do another one, I'm like, why don't I focus on the younger generation? Second of all, the statistics of our African continent, it's the youngest continent in the world. The average age in Kenya is 19.7. Of course, that's the consumer. What brand should I create? For the Gen Zs and millennials. Perfect. And then good timing. And da-da-da. So that busyness started because I created product. Okay. And then thinking, 13 years of experience, even getting investors will be too easy. Right? I mean, who doesn't know Suzie Beauty? Suzie Beauty's name. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I think I'm still in confusion about why did I do that? But it's not over yet, by the way. It's still there. Her name is SB Dada. I call her just a very naughty girl. SB, Suzie Beauty. Dada, younger sister. Yeah, so there I got the financials done, you know, got the right partners, all wrong, by the way. The marketing partners, disasters. My only correct partner is like my sidekick, who's like a finance person. And so I feel like there was so many mistakes I made because of the mentality of, I've done this before. It will be too easy. If I had my initial Suzie Beauty creation mentality, I think it would have been easier. But I was like, even when I'm fundraising, I'll do it later because it will be like a few months of process. Until today, it's been 2 years. Nothing. So then a lot of busyness, a lot of product created. I've made so many of these products. Okay, who wants them? Okay, we're ready to start fundraising. Okay, nothing is happening. Nothing. 2023 was in history like the worst fundraising year, and that's when I was fundraising. trying to cut down the line. Like, I made, 35 SKUs. Let's see what 10 we can produce. Focus groups. Everyone come and see. What can we take off? Nothing. But add these things. Okay, add these other things that they let's look for other manufacturers. Everything is still, well, actually, I managed to bring in some stuff, because even the investor, like PE funds and stuff that people I was talking to, they were like, you can't be in the market looking for money, talking about, I'm pre-revenue, like I haven't sold anything yet. You need traction. You're competing with millions of people looking for money every day with 5 years of sales and 8 years of sales and 3 years of sales. Figure it out. So managed to bring in some product, even that, and had a launch, like That's still, I feel like, a lot of busyness, because then, I wanted to, also, sorry, part of the brand, listen to all the beautiful steps I had. Younger generation, amazing product. 70% of sales will do online, because where does everyone live? On their gadgets. How can I make them be able to buy makeup online? Let's create tech. Let them be able to put the product on and hit buy. Everyone's shopping on Instagram anyway.
You're busy like no nonsense.
Hey. Until I'm even tired thinking of, but like, just look at the steps of that concept. Beautiful, right?
Yes.
Still hasn't happened. So much busyness. So that's part 2 of my story, because there's a reason why that is, she's sitting in the naughty corner for a little bit as I'm in my 3rd project, which this one, it's not busyness. But all that busyness, I'm so tired of thinking of all that I did. But imagine, like, that beautiful concept. Doesn't it make all the sense?
I'm laughing because...
You laughed at me.
The makers of the English language were very strange. They made business and busyness sound the same.
Yeah.
So are you in a business or business?
For real.
For real. Business with a Y and an I.
Yes.
It's very different.
Yeah, but you're busy, but business.
Business.
Yeah.
Business.
And that's interesting,
I was
because
busy.
that's amazing.
I was busy.
And I'm sure you cannot also add how many other board meetings you had. Okay.
Millions.
And meetings that don't even make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, anything more than an hour is not a meeting anymore.
Yeah, agreed.
Right?
Agreed. And then that's an interesting, because I really want to understand part 3. We'll come
Part
to why
3 is important.
I want to understand mentally why you feel you have to do what you have to do. Because maybe it's a mental problem.
So
Maybe
let
it's
me also...
But we'll come to that one.
We'll add to that. So, by the way, I didn't add the part of when I left, we had the divorce of Suzie Beauty, I had a loss of identity, for sure. I'm like, what's my name? What's my relevance anymore? So even part of that, let me introduce a new brand, and let's do it very quickly and in the smartest way, and so that I can maintain my clout, or even for my own self, like self-preservation, self-recreation. It's a new age and a new stage. Even if I'm mourning Suzie Beauty, because that's not my name anymore, but I'm still being called Suzie Beauty. Who am I? Who on earth am I? And So, that was part of this new recreation story.
That's interesting, because we'll come to that. And something George said earlier, and we're going to talk about it, is when, as an entrepreneur, you think that when you're on stage, other people are looking at you.
Exactly.
But the reality is nobody's looking at you.
Yes. That was such a good point.
Like, you could remember what he said. And
Yes.
you're thinking, and then maybe you repeat that, George, as we come around to really understanding why we do what we do, because this is understanding why we do. It's a great point you're going to talk, because we're on different stages. Suzie, you're doing your thing. You think I'm looking at you. I'm not looking at you.
I know.
Like, we're in this topic right now. The time I'm looking at you for the
I
first time.
thought I was being
never thought about
watched
it.
by everyone. I was being watched.
Yeah. But you hope nobody's looking at you. This is the first time maybe where people are going to be looking at you, right?
Yeah.
Other times people never really cared, right? And that also brings me to a very interesting point to Mr. Kariuki.
Yes.
You know, there's something called effort without evidence.
Yes.
You know, you work so hard, you've raised capital, you've built infrastructure, you've hired people, like what you said. But when you turn back and say, my God, do I have anything to show for it?
Yeah.
Jesus. Do you have anything to show for what I've done? I'd like you to talk to you what happens when you have nothing to show? And despite investing so much, because when I look at your story, and I think you can, because I know your beat, you can talk about the effort, the amount of investment you did to one day turn around and realize, my God, 37 years of my life gone.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
And what happens to you when you get to that point?
Yeah. I think nothing to show for it will be a good thing. If I left with no money, I'd have been a happier person. I left with debt. So when you're leaving, you're not like, okay.
So you have something to show for it, but negative.
Negative. So you're like, okay, if I just sat at home and did nothing, I'd be better off than I am now. But the thing is, I've learned a lot over the years. One of the key things I've learned is that situations are what you make them. And so, you know, this, I forget the exact name of the theory, but it's like you're late for the bus in the morning, you think it's a horrible thing, but the bus you are supposed to get in rolls and everyone dies, and so your life is saved. It's kind of how I look at my life in a very weird way. Because it took a lot of introspection to realize that many of the situations I found myself in were poison chalices. So the nature of the business from when I joined it was flawed. I'd either made a mistake in regards to how the company is structured, or who had given what, or who I'd partnered with, which is fine. The thing is, though, I've never made a mistake I've not paid for. And so for a very long time, I felt like the world was unfair to me. And I'd ask myself, okay, what's going on? Like, I know other people who made similar mistakes. I'm not the first, I was never the first person to raise capital. People who raised capital with very friendly investors whose objective was to enable them to do their jobs and not to sort of punish them. There are people who started businesses with partners who are not looking to break the law to get an upper hand. But I felt, so at some point I had like this almost, wallowing, oh, woe is me, oh, things are bad. But there's something about life. It marches on. It's indifferent. And when you start sort of looking at the arc of history, you realize exactly how insignificant you are. I know it's a bit of a dark way to look at it, but, to quote what is a controversial topic, but Anne Frank died. Like, that was it. We have a bunch of people who fought for independence. Dedan Kimathi still is in an unmarked grave 60 plus years later. It is because of him that we are here. And that ended and life moved on. So it's, unless you're conceited, then that's when you think that you should never encounter hardship. And, if you do X, like life is formulaic. If I put in 3 hours into entrepreneurship, my income will go up by 3,000 shillings a day. Like, that's not how it works. And so if you realize that, okay, fine, tough things happen, they will break you. But now what do you do next? So now you're forced to look at the lessons you've learned. And over the years, the lessons I learned were very counter to what many people expected me to learn. And the biggest lesson I learned was when my second last startup sort of ended. What I learned was relationships matter more than people think. Mm-hmm. And so we were being given a not insignificant amount of money by a not insignificant company. And, things start going sideways. And what I did is I killed the deal. I was like, look, if this thing collapses now, I will no longer have a reputation. So I'll still be poor, I'll still be in debt, but I also won't have a reputation. And so I pulled the plug. And to date, by the way, even for the next projects I'm working on, those same individuals are involved, maintain the relationship. But the most important thing I learned is everyone thinks they're a hero in their own story, you know. When you're seated here, at the back of your mind, all your friends are thinking about you, and they're like, oh my God, what's happening with this person? And they're all gossiping. I came to realize, like, life moves on and no one cares. Like, when I find myself being forced to rehash the story, because literally people have not thought about that particular situation in years. I never even thought about what I was doing. Because everyone has their own problems. Everyone has a mortgage. They have a wife. They have children. And for them, those problems are existential. So it is also very conceited to be sitting here thinking, oh, my friends are all worried about what's going on. No. They have bills, they have fees. Like, life is happening. And again, life is indifferent. So you kind of have to be very dispassionate about your situation in life and the way you're looking at the world to survive these things. Because if you think that you're exceptional, even if you are, it does not guarantee a good outcome. And there are so many stories to be told. One that sticks out to me is Steve Jobs, one of the most intelligent people on the planet. He arguably passed away because he refused to get the right care early enough. Like, people had found out that he had cancer, but his entire life, like, sort of, the rules had not applied. And as an older individual, he'd not sort of unlearned that. And so people are telling him, go get cure, and then he starts looking for herbal and alternative medication. Cancer gets aggressive. He passes away. And he ultimately paid for that judgment decision with his life. The thing is, that was a very visible example. We individually make the same mistake over and over. Whether it's remaining in a business you should not be in, or in a job you should not be in. But you're kind of looking at the sunk cost and, oh, this is my reputation, this is how people perceive me. But there's liberty in being anonymous. If nobody knew who you are and what you profess to know and your reputation, what course of action will you take? Because we are very good at giving advice. When I look at anyone's life, I'll be like, oh, this person should not have done this, should not have done that, da. But you always discount the emotion that and the exact situation somebody is in. And my argument is we should do the counter. When looking inwards, we should be a bit harsher and be like, okay, somebody else will not forgive this or that or the other because they wouldn't have access to this information. But when you're looking at others, be a bit more compassionate. I don't know what pain they're going through. I don't know what their story is from childhood. I don't know what is guiding them. And that sort of manages your psychology. Because on one hand, you're trying to... I'm not saying that you just criticize yourself and say that that's negative self-esteem. That's a whole other thing. But you realize that at some point, the world is not bothered as much about you as you think. And so you take the time to make the best decision for you without accounting for third-party input. And then also when you look at other people in similar situations, you don't be harsh because you realize that there's a part of their story you do not understand. And be kinder to them because chances are, if you found out why they did what they did, you would be with them. And like I'll give a personal example. I had some arguments with my father over time. He was born in the 40s. Some time back, I took the time to understand his life. And when I did that, I was the answer to the question, if I was him, would I have been where he is, was no. To date, I do not understand how he made it out of that situation. But without that context, it is very easy for me to criticize and say, But if you look inwardly at the same time and say, I have these opportunities and other people do not see the opportunities and the gifts, how do I make use of them? You will find a way to claw out. And so when I looked at my situation, having lost, at that point, thinking I've lost everything, I realized I have the knowledge from the situation. I understand the products, I understand the market. And the second last startup in particular gave me a fairly global network. And I realized that this is objectively true. I have one of the widest networks nationally or globally. Why am I struggling? And I have this gift presented to me. And why don't I now take the gifts that have been given to me to determine the rest of my life? And once I did that, it became easier to get out of the funk.
Wow, interesting. Oh my God, it's really, really good points. I was just wondering as you're speaking and really realizing we are sometimes harsh to people who don't know their journeys. Yeah. And sometimes getting somebody out of that loop, maybe it's not your story to get them out of the loop. They need to want to get out of that loop. And you can't force them. You can't boot them out of that. You can't do what we call a forced software update on this person. You have refused to get out of it. And God forbid you're in a marriage and the founder has refused to eject from a situation. That also can even cost your marriage, I would assume, in many cases. We're going to come to that conversation one of these days. But coming back to this conversation now, we wanted to explore critically in our thinking why we are where we are. Why do we find ourselves in this loop? And I'm going to start this conversation in a very interesting way. Look at macro issues. We, in the last 4 years, have become a hustler nation. Tuamka asubuhi tukasema, tukue hustler nation. See, hustle. Hustle has become part of life. Your typical Kenyan, by 6 o'clock, if they're not up in the streets, even if they don't know what they're going to do, they're on the street. Is that correct? Where they don't know where they're going to make money, they don't have a clue, many Kenyans will be on the street. Because the moment you're sleeping, you know it's death. So we are a hustler nation. And then hustler culture that has come into it. Sometimes I'm not sure if that's hustler nation. I have neither here or there in terms of our conversation, but as a hustler nation, we need to be in the grind. And that's maybe why Kenya is known to be extremely hardworking. But sometimes I think it's like a pyramid scheme. Yeah?
It is.
It's like a pyramid scheme. Because I know you will wake up. Me, I know I'll wake up. So we constantly know in one day we'll get there. But then there are people who take advantage knowing you'll wake up and I'll wake up. Is that correct? If I know you won't show up, I'll just tell you, fire you, I hire the next guy. If I know you cannot supply, I'll delay your payments because the next guy will fit in. So you realize the whole system now starts working against itself. Because you know you won't show up, another guy will. We don't start and say, no, since you're not paying us, we're not all going to. You will still find as a team of people. If you guys revolt and say we're not going to do, there's one guy who will go behind the back and say, Mintafanya. You see, then you see it's a hustler ecosystem, or what we call a continuous loop of bad behavior. So we are constantly in that loop. So we need to start interrogating these conversations. Why are we now, intelligently, we start ask ourselves, why are we where we are? Recently, I was trying to work with smaller companies, and I was trying to introduce them. Like, part of them I'm consulting in this project I'm doing, trying to tell them, come and do some work for us. And I told them, guys, come on. You can use AI to do what you're trying to do for me. Can you please? The CEO told me, no. AI, as we've been doing like this all the time, this is the way it is. Hey, I said, my friend, stop jokes. Okay? We can use AI. They totally shut me up. I even told them, okay, fine, let my son try and do this job. My son ended up doing 14, 15-year-old, doing some work that a corporate would have done, but now all of a sudden I said AI is available. So in the age of AI, what's going to happen to people who are not accepting or willing to unlearn? Yeah. That's number one. And it's a question I want us to answer a little bit. What's going to happen in the age of AI? And then number two, just to guide our conversations, is to say, why does the myth of a hustling founder remain so attractive in an African entrepreneurship space? Okay. Why is it? Is it a mental? Is it an operation? Is it something that you feel? Is it you're told amuka uende kazi? Enda shule amuka uende kazi? Is that what is driving us? Just I want you to think about it. And when does the hustle become a mark? When does the hustle become almost like it's your identity? Because if you say, what are you doing tomorrow? And you cannot be able to explain, then you lose your identity as what Suzie said. You don't know who you are anymore. If you wake up and tell people I do nothing, even at table they'll ask you, hey, this one, is he Mkora? Is he your normal? Okay? Then are we as entrepreneurs, as founders, addicted to being needed? Are you addicted to be wanted? Can you be able to pull? Because that's also part of why we're unable to delegate. So you're busy. The day one day you wake up and nobody's calling you and your whole ecosystem is working, do you feel lonely? Does loneliness bug you as an entrepreneur? Just to think about it. And then I also talked about, when do you distinguish between grit and grind? You know, grit and grind are two different things. Is that correct? So, and then how many of us as entrepreneurs do we admit we are exhausted? This is nonsense. This I don't do anymore, to be honest. I sell airtime every day. I cannot wake up another day and sell airtime. Man, this is not me. I'm not cut for this. Is that correct? And what does working smart for you mean today? So I don't know. I've thrown many questions out there, but that's why I want us to sort of discuss without any order. Whichever of those questions grabbed your mind, because it's also challenging my audience to say, like surely, why am I doing what I'm not doing? Yeah. Am I increasing my mental capability? Can this be driven by AI, for instance? Yeah. Am I addicted to being wanted in the business?
Yeah.
Yeah. So over to you guys. You guys can go in any random manner.
You need to give us notebooks. This guy has read. Let me just tell you. That guy
many books.
As we have been there in that selling airtime. So this is really what attracted me to come to have this conversation today. First, just to recap on what I said, and what we had talked earlier, what I said is that the problem of entrepreneurship is that it has been sexied so much that it's actually cool to call yourself a founder and entrepreneur and CEO. But to be honest, it's the worst job on earth. Like, it's the hardest thing to do. Like, you imagine you're entering something which statistically only 1% of people ever make it out. Like, really, this is how is that glamorous? and what is that? Because they are made it to look like that, then, and you get the high of your first sale, or the high of your projections, you imagine there's an audience cheering. And usually you post, everyone there says, oh, great, good job. Let me tell you, no one who has ever bought from you was there posting. The guys who post have no intention of buying from you. So you imagine there's an audience. And so so what you think is, and I'll give an example. Because we're here because we're entrepreneurs, and let me talk about one of my children. This one, and I tell you, so the idea of entrepreneurship is the idea to stop working. We have to say that. You're starting business so that you don't work. You don't start business so that you work harder. You work business so that it works for you and gives you money and you don't work. A successful entrepreneur should be here in this club every day doing nothing. So how is it that we think entrepreneurship is working harder? The idea is that you have an idea, you apply HR, capital, partners to it, and you turn it into a self-revolving machine which churns out money. That's the idea of business. Business is not about working hard. So now in Kenya, we've gotten to the idea that business is about chasing, working. Like if you ask people, hey, maze, kuskuma tu, pushing. And you ask someone 20 years later, like if it was working hard, maize farmers would be the richest people. Those guys have put those seeds in the ground for the last 30 years. Grows. It's like an infinite loop. And if you don't get that, like every day you're working, you should work harder so that you stop working. Because work never ends. It's just that you're figuring, I'm going to create a process that works without me. Now, let me tell you, so we went, and I was giving you a story when we were having tea. And so my delusion was innovating, seeing opportunities for people who have not seen. So I've looked at you, Mike. I've realized the biggest problem here is that people don't have somewhere to put their shoes when they come. So I go, without asking you, I create a machine which removes your shoes when you come for this talk, and it polishes them and it massages your feet. Then I do prototype, I do design, I come, I tell you, Mike, there's a machine here for removing shoes. And you look at me, why would I need a machine for removing shoes? And then I think the problem is that I've not added enough features to convince you So I go, I innovate. Now it even, it has Bluetooth. You can instruct it with Bluetooth. Like Delulu. So if you ask me, I'm working very hard to solve a problem which is in my head. And if you ask most entrepreneurs, and they launch that machine, the shoe removing machine. There's a big launch. They do a Facebook page, Instagram page. They even hire a CTO, a CEO. Shoe removing machine. I once built a shoe removing machine. Now let me tell you. We built a shoe removing machine.
You did?
Yes. So it's an analogy for the business world.
Why didn't you build a chapati maker?
There's demand for a million a day.
So what we had seen, and let me tell you, and as well as give you a story. So at the time, I think some time ago, there were two instances. Cars were being stolen from car hire companies. And so we came up with a way where the guy and what they would do is that they would give you fake IDs and fake DLs. So we bumped into some system that was doing digital verification. So we told the guys, for 200 bob, if you grab the ID, it verifies whether it's a legit ID, then you can give him the car. So you'll make money. In fact, pass the cost to him. So I sat and I thought, that's brilliant. We were buying the verifications for, I think, 10 bob. We were selling them 200 bob. Like, shoe machine. So we did, set up the system, bought the credits, everything, launched. In fact, put an office with a very fancy, a big fancy sign. Near State House Road. And launched. And I put carpet like this one. Nice. CEO's office in the corner. Shoe removing machine. Launched. Listen, the way cars are hired in this country, they're hired through brokers. They're not hired, it's not it's not owner interaction. So the broker takes the car, he gives the car to another guy. There's nowhere they are sharing IDs or all these other things. So, and then the broker doesn't want the car owner to meet the customer. Yeah. Because the first thing the car owner does is text that guy and they remove the owner's commission. Like our culture is the problem.
Disintermediate your...
Yes, immediately.
Great trade.
So your system was exposing this guy to this guy. So what did the brokers do? They killed it. So my shoe removing machine.
In the office.
And the office and the carpet. And the credits. We bought credits in millions. Because we went... It was going to work. And then we took that, so we had credit. So we said, the next people we were going to, at the time there was femicides happening. Girls were dying in Roysambu somewhere. Mm-hmm. And Nigerians were put them in suitcases. So we said, that same thing, why don't we verify who is entering an Airbnb? And we met the government officials, we met the people who license Airbnbs, met everyone, and we said, now we're going to launch it as national policy. When you're entering an Airbnb, you show your whatever, it enters our system, it swaps, we run our credits, make money. I did the number of, again, went to that Delulu tool called Excel. How many Airbnbs? 200 bob, drag down, George, you are rich. Let me tell you. There's not a single Airbnb owner who doesn't know that Airbnbs are not accommodation centers. They are used for other things. The people who go there are not going there to sleep. They are going to do other things. So when you bring legitimization of the ID, you're killing the core business. So every Airbnb owner says, but my customer said, "Hey, mnataka kutujua." Kwa nini? Because you do not want to know who was in that room. And this is the problem. Like I said, you can see working. So when you look at that scenario of what we are doing, working very hard, we're working. If you ask me, we were launching, we were innovating, we had structure, we had carpet. There's nothing we didn't have. But we've not gone and figured who told us this is a problem. Who is this who came to us and said, me, I'm struggling with renting my car. But all we did, we saw a scenario and assumed it and did not validate it. So if you ask most Kenyans, what happens is that everyone is in this loop of solving problems that they are seeing that they have not been told. And the worst thing now where you have to double work is that, and Suzie will tell you and Kariuki will tell you, The challenge of before the product takes off, there are some 6-12 months here. What are you eating? So you can't innovate on hunger. So what happens is that most people are busy building the shoe removing machine, and in the meantime, having a night job, selling airtime, so that they can eat while supporting this Delulu dream to take off. So the burnout comes is that most Kenyans are working 2 jobs because they can't raise capital until there's POC. So he has to feed the family, or he or she has to feed the family. They have a job for that. Then they have this other layer on top where they are building for something that doesn't exist. Now, if you ask most entrepreneurs, the burnout and the chaos, and all it would take is to sit before you start, validate. But why don't we validate? We are so scared that if I tell you that I'm going to charge 200 bob on a cost of 10 shillings, you will take my idea, charge 100 and rent. So who do I tell? No one. In fact, Ramuko in the office even watches have NDAs. There is no one who I'm thinking everyone is coming to steal my shoe removing machine. She's going nowhere. So and you see the cycle continues. And so when the shoe removing machine, now you start with a hat removing machine, and you never, and then, so if you look at most of us, you always a founder, a CEO of something. But in the meantime, on the side, how he survives, he has an M-Pesa shop, he has a couple of Ubers, and that is what is feeding him. Maybe if he focused on the M-Pesa shops, he will scale. Like and if you really, really talk to most entrepreneurs, what they can tell you is that what keeps them going is the projections they drew for the shoe removing machine. But what is keeping them alive is what they do, consultancy. Like this great team you have here, if they really excelled at what they did, they can host many whatevers. But if he's seated here and on the side, he's the guy selling potatoes from Kinangop to Nairobi, there is no way he's going to focus on doing this production. And that is where we have a struggle. But then somebody says, but since the camera work has not picked up, what will I be eating? So you see how this infinite loop comes in the market. And so it's to sit and, before you start business, and that's why I'm saying the hustle delusion. There's some blind faith that is required, but what I've found is that it's very hard to copy a business. Mike, even if you gave me all your clients and all your employees and your offices, I would never rebuild 7 Seas. Even if you give me your notes, even if you are my consultant, I can't. And I think that's where we go wrong. We think that everyone is seeing the opportunity the same way. It's like somebody assuming that if they go and tell my girlfriend the same sentences I told her, she will marry them. It doesn't work that. There is a way it has to be delivered. This is not high. You know, there's high and high. Then there's high. They are different. So stop being so afraid that your business, I should have gone with the business and sat and told the Airbnb owners, let me talk to 10. Would you pay for this? Let me talk to the car hire people. Would you buy this? And if 9 say no, I don't say, why are you not seeing? That is the problem. That you say, Nyinyi ndio wajinga. They have been doing this all their lives, and I'm calling them silly. Me who has never rented a car out. I'm the one who knows, but I'm telling them, you guys cannot see. You need, and don't be so scared if they're going to, I know I'm taking time, so I'll rush on this one. When I saw this video, this lady explaining how in a supermarket, when you walk into the water aisle, there are rows and rows and rows of brands of water. What is the content? Water. What is the difference? Branding. But it's water. And priced differently. And every of those brands sells out. There's always a stock out. Water. And water is water. In fact, the water is free. It comes out in a tap. But still, if you understand that, then there's an infinite possibilities. There can be 2 7 Cs. But the fact that I start at 7 Cs, that company was called Verify. the start that I started verify doesn't mean there's no space for another verify. There's space for water. Just carve out your small group, niche it out, execute. You don't need, look, if you're making 200 bob a transaction, you don't need 10,000 people transacting an hour. You don't need to go into telco scale. You just need to leave a very decent turnaround profit. You just need a couple of, say, 1,000 people running a day. And you've made a tidy sum where no one knows you. You only have 1,000 customers who you obsess over. You're making your turnover of 190 a day. You live a very good life after you pay your taxes. Who will not survive nicely on 3 million? We don't look at it. We want loud businesses. We want, so I want to take over the whole Airbnb industry. I need 100,000 customers. No, maybe I could just survive on 1,000. It's that realization that somebody said the people who really, really enjoy are the people with, there are different schools of thought, but I believe in that school of thought. The people who end up with like a team of 6 and a $3 to $4 million turnover. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys enjoying business. Mm-hmm. This, Mike, you had how many employees? 800?
Many.
Is it like 800 employees? 6 floors.
200.
Many. You go there.
But you're right. My life was amazing when I had 20, 30.
Yes.
When revenue was just 20 million.
It's nice.
You're undercover, nobody's asking, nobody's asking you. But then that also, and we're going to come back to that question, because you just said something that's very interesting. Are we overeducated? Do you think when you over-engineer your brain through too much knowledge, you become a liability to yourself? Because some of the great businesses were built by people who, in Kenya, think about it, 2 things. We have a winner-takes-all attitude. Mm-hmm. If you look at our telco industry, it's one telco that owns 70% of the market. It is in most of our industries. It's one person. You go to a brewing business, winner takes all. You go to our eatery businesses, who is the biggest? You find it's one guy who owns half there. So do you think that, again, you look at politically, it's also winner takes everything. Do you think it's a cultural problem as a country, that it's a winner take all? Then everybody else is sort of just coasting along? Number 2, is our education system is such that it's not built in a way that it helps us be able to have more clarity of thought in terms of where we are? Because you could find a guy who never even reached phone 2. He's going to ask himself more critical questions than you. But because you're over-engineered, you're even going to mess it up. Is that correct?
Yes.
And maybe now with AI, it's even going to become worse. Okay. Maybe. I don't even know what's going to happen, because most of us are going to be jumping and doing everything. So those are 2 things. And then I'm also thinking at political moments when we've had leaders who have come in and just made things work. Michuki, for instance, the whole thing of safety belt. Just think about it, how complex it was to change a whole industry. There is no other person who has come and managed in a very short period of time to do that kind of, that level of translation. In terms of people agreeing, it's a safety issue for me. We need to have safety belts. Because think about it, Matatu's never had safety belts. You had to create an industry to build safety belts. You have to get people to agree to be in a Matatu and put safety belts. So what is lacking at a leadership problem, at a leadership level, to want, because I think there's a lot of working hard. We launch stuff, we have busy people, human beings. Why are we not moving at the velocity we should move? Because you could move a lot, but you're not making leaps. It depends on the gear. So we want to be Singapore, but definitely Singapore must have made certain very smart decisions. China 40 years ago was very different. Today, China, you think, my God, did they cycle so hard to get there, or did they cycle smart? What is it?
So
smart, of course.
I have thoughts about what you've brought up, and they're not like direct thoughts. But one of the key things is I recently saw a post online commenting on funding in Africa. And you could sort of see the surges in foreign funding into African startups when the funding went up and the funding went down. And there's an aphorism that when the tide goes out, you know who was swimming naked. And the challenge with that particular problem is we are downstream from US Fed policy. So when the US government decides that, the economy is doing badly and it reduces interest rates, money floods, money looks for opportunities, it comes here. And many entrepreneurs in this part of the world thought they were clever. And so they were very excited. And they raised all this money and never bothered worrying about P&L. And then inflation hits up. COVID happens, inflation hits up, interest rates rise. Money dries up. The entrepreneurs suddenly cannot raise more money, the businesses collapse. I use that analogy primarily because at times, in our ecosystem, in Kenya, we are swimming against impossible waters. So there's a book by Hernando de Soto Polar that I keep recommending to people, which is The Mystery of Capital. And this is an economist who took his time and actually tried to run a business in, I think it is Peru. I believe he's Peruvian. And this book that he wrote formed the basis for the World Bank Doing Business report. In Kenya, we take that book and implement it, but we completely soil the spirit while implementing the letter. Why do I bring this up? If you started a business or even bought a house or invested in real estate between the year 2001 and 2010, you thought you were a genius. Things worked. Real estate was affordable and it was accelerating in value. Land in Upper Hill in the year 2000 was what, 10 million shillings an acre? It's now, or 20 million shillings, it's now 500 million shillings an acre. So if you had 20 million shillings then and you took a mortgage and you bought 2 acres, you're now a billionaire. You never did anything. It's sort of like you were carried by the market. So we tend to forget or disregard the headwinds, the tailwinds we face. And we tend to overemphasize the headwinds we face. And so why am I saying this? We are currently in a country where you have no regulatory stability. How to file your taxes changes literally every April when the finance bill comes out. So if I'm looking to raise capital, for instance, let's use the ISP space as an example. How excise duty is being handled has just changed because KRA has interpreted it one way. How corporate tax is filed has changed. So even like planning your business is difficult. So you have this environment where it is difficult to plan your business. It is difficult to run your business. It is difficult to own your business. And people collapse. And it is very easy. And that's why I was saying earlier, we need to be harsher with ourselves and kinder to other people. It is very easy for us to say people are copycats. But again, Kenya is a Toyota market. Why? We have potholes in our roads. We have frivolous mechanics. When you see people behave a certain way, that is information. It doesn't mean that they're insane. The market has sent information, and this information is that if you're in Kenya, you cannot have a car with low-profile tires, you cannot have a car with stiff suspension, you cannot have a car that's expensive to maintain, and you have to have a car that can deal with abuse from like bad fuel, etc., etc., etc. That's a signal. And what we are seeing with entrepreneurs struggling is an environment. Because when you remove Kenyans from here and put them in the US, they're one of the highest educated, highest earning people in the US, outperforming Nigerians, outperforming almost everyone apart from, I believe, people from the Indian subcontinent. So objectively, we are some of the hardest working, most intelligent people. We are being failed by systemic government operational issues, which impoverish all of us. And what is happening is many people now start thinking that there's a problem with entrepreneurs. As a very simple example, the last IPO was in the Kibaki era. I think, 2015. There was a single one. But between 2002 and 2013, there was a time everyone thought they were a genius at stock market investing. Where are those geniuses now? Like, it's the same market. But the market has been losing value from 2013 to 2025. If you are so good at this investing, show us the returns. And there is an aphorism, like I am a huge Buffett manga, and what they said was, if you get 1,000 people, or let's say 4,000 people, and you told them to choose heads or tails, first iteration, 4,000 people, 2,000 people will get heads correct. And when you ask those 2,000 people to gamble again, half of them will get it correct. And effectively, you have people who think, you have a shrinking number of people, but who every time this gambling thing happens, because it's 50-50 odds, 50% will get it right on the first iteration, so that you're left with 2,000, then another 1,000, then 500. There are people who will have gotten it right all through and will genuinely think they're geniuses and that they know how to predict when you toss a coin. But it's chance. But you've not taken time to think about what you're doing. Like, the metacognition is fairly poor in society in general. And so you kind of need to have people look at this. I'm saying we need to be kinder to entrepreneurs, because we're in this environment where nothing is predictable. You cannot depend on government. Contracts are not enforceable. And as a result, tax policy is a bit harsh. So the amount of money in the economy has gone back down to 2001 levels. It's not that you're stupid. It's not that you have to hustle. It's that your work, you're being choked by an environment around you. And the way to think about it, another frame of reference you can use is, it's impossible to grow flowers in the desert. And it's impossible to hunt polar bear in the Sahara. Like, there are things you cannot do when the environment does not allow you to do them. If you want to catch seals and polar bear, go to the North Pole. If you want to catch camels, go to the Sahara. But we are in an environment that is actively hostile to entrepreneurs. And the way that comes out is many people are forced to, because they have a dream, they have an objective, and that's admirable. They are forced to do what they need to do to keep this thing alive. And it is fair for them to do that. But we look at it from this other perspective where we discount their passion and the need to do this thing and achieve this thing, and discount the emotional, the contextual environments they're in. But the reality of the matter is, if we give the country a friendlier environment, there's data. You look at Singapore, you look at China, deregulation was the biggest thing. It made it easier and more predictable to do business. And what that did is it brought in capital. So then you stop having these arguments for what do you need to do to raise capital. Because when capital is very scarce as it is in this part of the world, which is abnormal, you can be dismissed for not having the right smile or not having combed your hair before the meeting. Like, there are so many entrepreneurs, and the investors know they'll get a good return, that they just use whatever frivolous mechanisms exist to dismiss you. But again, I take you back to the Kibaki years. We were used to, in the 90s, for those who can remember, I remember trying to open a bank account, and the banks kicked me out. You'd go and they're like, who are you? Yeah. I remember even we were both in Strathmore. You'd pay fees in the Barclays Bank in Lavington. Barclays Bank woke up one day and decided Lavington and DBC Place branches, they no longer wanted them. So the account was moved to Hurlingham. And they just closed it. They didn't want to talk to us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they do that. Like, the banks will actively just close branches because they were like, you people are your income is not enough to justify a branch in that area. But remember, this is ABC Place, this is Lavington. Shortly after, I was trying to open a bank account. KCB pushed me out. I'd go to these banks. Like, you'd go and beg them to give them money. Equity came along and made it easier. But I've digressed. We moved from that period to when you'd go to a mall and somebody's giving you a credit card, to when they were hawking bank accounts and hawking debt because the economy was doing well and there was plenty of money to lend and everyone could buy land and everyone could buy a house and everyone could get a loan for their business. And suddenly, everyone thought they were clever. So I'm not saying that people are stupid. I'm saying in Kenya, we're in a unique position where it is very difficult to distinguish between what you as a founder are doing wrong and what is a byproduct of industry being killed by government. Because this government woke up the other day and said, you cannot sell, I think it was cashew nuts or macadamia nuts. They banned the export. If you think about how cruel that is as an action, it takes months to get that yield. And then you've suddenly wiped out some farmers' income. And so the farmer will learn from that and only do what they see other people doing and not try and innovate. So in my view, it's a complicated issue. We have systemic issues in government, but at the same time, we need to be able to dispassionately look at the business models we are talking about, like the shoe thing you're talking about. You need to be able to dispassionately look at it, but do not discount the fact that there is a world in which, for the Airbnbs that did not want to be in this malarkey of, having people dying in their rooms, they would have wanted a secure environment. And we do not have enough of a legitimate market, which if we were a larger market would have been there and the business would have worked.
Wow, interesting, because it gets me thinking as we go to even Suzie and any other person with, any of you with comments. I feel you've talked about two things. You've talked about the when all of us started business 2003, those years, and we are where we are. I feel part of being in the loop and being busy is having two mindsets: a transactional mindset and a visionary mindset. I feel right now, as individuals, as entrepreneurs, we've become extremely transactional. Well, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow and next month. You just live for the month. It's very transactional. You just hope month end comes. I don't know if of late you feel a month is coming to an end, you just say, my God, let it just come to an end. A year is coming to an end, you just say, hey, wacha hiki tuishe. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think there was those moments I would say, my God, in 3 years I'm going to be in the stock market. I remember going to the stock market and telling my shareholders, 2016 we have to list this company. Now I can't even remember dreaming that I can't even have that conversation, because I know it's not possible. It's not because we're not computer. I just know there's too much chaos to get there, right? So how do you remain sober? Suzie, you sold your business, because you could not have sold your business if you had thought visionary. For you to register patents, for you to register IP, it means you had seen mbele. You're not just saying, let me make a little bit of makeup here to just feed my family. You had thought, if I could build this brand, even for you to agree, I'm going to call it Suzie Beauty. It means you've already thought about it already, saying, I've started today as SB. Tomorrow I'm going to build this brand. I can take it to Lagos. So it means you thought about it from a visionary point of view. But if you had not thought visionary, if you had become transactional, you'd be saying, what if they come to my office tomorrow and close it down? What if NEMA comes tomorrow? What if people start saying all of a sudden SB is associated with NEMA? What if SB is associated with bad product? Because today anything can happen. You can even be told today somebody can come and say with online and or whatever, you can just come and be told that Suzie Beauty sells fake products. That's the end of you. So your brand goes. So how do we turn in a very transactional economy? We are very transactional. You wake up in the morning and everyone just keeps going. From a visionary kind of turnaround. Because I almost feel like the only guys who are working smart are politicians. Think about it. The politician in 5 years is able to move from zero to be a billionaire. Don't you think they've figured it out? Me, I think they figured it out. No, think about it. You, in your mindset, you can't imagine from now in 5 years to be a billionaire.
No, sorry. Let me just add.
Can you figure that? I don't know. I'm just asking.
No.
Do you sit down like this and say in 5 years, I can move from zero to a billion? Where? I will explain to you. Help me. You tell me. I don't. I know it's a 7-year, 10-year journey, 14-year journey.
In Excel.
I clearly know.
In Excel
she can.
Billionaire.
I know you can become a billionaire. 7 years minimum. Minimum 7 years. It's called a 7-year cycle.
I actually have wanted to comment on this for a while. The mistake we make as Kenyans is assuming our politicians are stupid.
But you never say they're stupid. They're very smart. That's what I'm saying. They're the only ones.
But what I came to realize, and our politicians are a mirror of our society. If we are disgusted with what we see, we need to realize we're looking at a mirror. You look at our behavior on the roads, anywhere. People are always doing these small grifts. The reason I say that is politicians have figured out how to get elected, how to stay elected, and how to use the public purse to enable all of that. And they have been doing this consistently for 60 years. There has to be some credit given for whatever form of perverted genius this is, but they have successfully done it. Every time the elections happen, the people who end up winning are exactly the same people who we said we'll never vote for. So if you dissociate yourself from the Kenyan as an orator and look at the Kenyan as a person and look at their behavior, we get exactly what we chose. But what we vocalize, it's like the typical Christian sort of, I don't want to single out a religion, but you have pederasts amongst your clergy. That is what kind of like the religion condones, even though you say that it's against you. Forget about what they are saying. Look at what they are doing. And the politicians have looked at us. They have understood our lack of morality and our need for them to vocalize morality. So as they're doing perverse things, they are vocalizing morality, which is the average Kenyan. We will say we are not corrupt, but we have a corruption problem. We will say we don't overlap. Our roads are gridlocked. And the politicians figured out the average person has some delineation between who they say they are and who they are. And they basically take advantage of that and signal and mirror that. And they're able to finance everything from end to end, to the point where they're part of this country where if you do not pay for your votes, you will not get elected. But we've refused to accept that this is who we are. I understand. Like, for me, I read a lot and I consume information like however, if you ask me to go to Uhuru Park and tell a crowd to follow me, even if it's just to near our house, I can't. I lack that charisma. But you have people who've successfully convinced a country to act against their own short-term self-interest, whether it's an MP, governor, etc., and people still follow them and die for them. I am not saying, forget about everything. You look at the voting pattern, who wins and what they do. And you cannot argue against at least the political intelligence of the person who keeps winning and keeps being voted for by the very people they're oppressing and robbing.
So as we go to Suzie, are we cast as a nation? Because if our dream is to leapfrog, okay, and we keep saying we want to be the next, I don't know, whatever, right? Are we? Because I know that this way of working, where we are just almost like on a loop, will not get us to where we need to be. Yeah. We will depend on other people to constantly be coming and be building on us, right? And creating wealth for themselves, but we just become what you call consumers. So what do you think, from your point of view, as now we start looking at the future, at the end of the day, we are the guys who are going to make the difference.
Yeah.
Because if we don't accept that we're going to be the guys who are going to make a difference, then how are we going to make a difference? So for you, now you've sold your business. You're now in a new business. So there has to be some level of self-awareness from what I'm reading. Because if you're not self-aware, then you can't move forward. So what next? And I think I'm going to the next phase to ask ourselves, what next?
So for me, I keep saying, and I say this on all global stages I go talking in, Africa is not the next frontier. It is the frontier. For real. Let's leave leadership aside for now. But understanding that this youngest continent in the world, that's important. I keep saying Kenya should be the add a K to BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, Kenya, South Africa, because we don't have what the West has, and in terms of products and services and whatever. So we're hungry, and we have a very the entrepreneurial spirit that you've talked about. People waking up at 6 a.m. to hopefully go and do something. The owner of the brand that I run now, called Obao, is out of Austria. I was driving him around Nairobi and Ruiru, where we do production and whatever. He's like, this is crazy. It's crazy to watch. Everyone is working. Everyone on the street. There's a guy, chopping wood to make furniture. There's a guy selling fish. There's a guy roasting maize. That everyone is just like trying to work. To take you back to something you had said before about entrepreneurship. Do you remember a time when it used to be a shame to be a businessman? Like, oh, no, yeah, he couldn't get a job. Now it's, oh, yeah, you're hired by someone else. You don't have your own business. So even that mentality is real. So I wish you've just depressed me with all your stories, by the way. I'm like, we need to get the right leadership to own this spirit that we do have. It's here. Yeah, and I believe in it. And I believe that Kenya can be the K in the BRICS.
Interesting, because I guess as we now start looking at, we're doing some level of self-reflection and looking at things of, yes, Kariuki has told us what we don't want to hear, which is fine. But now we need to be able to say, how do we forge forward? Okay, and that's really going to be a challenge.
Also, when you saw me opposing him with the politicians are smart, no. What is the percentage of the masses?
They're still smart.
90?
Whoever votes.
And that's who's given. That's where the corruption comes, and that's why the numbers are there.
So, but
it's not because they're smart. They just.
But let's agree.
Spend.
At the end of the day, whatever we do, we have to have some level of insights out of our conversation. So somebody seated somewhere thinking, "My God, what are these people telling us?" Or how do I reset myself out of this situation? Because that's what I'm hoping.
I'm with the politicians. I'm the first one going to side with them.
Okay.
Because this is business. I've seen a business model here that is working. You said that be in 5 years.
Yeah.
So what is working about this business model? It is shameless. So first, as an entrepreneur, I think we first throw shame. Because the guy who was in court yesterday for swindling a guy thoroughly is the guy telling you how he was persecuted. And if you understand their business model is zero shame. That's just their business model. I'm not condoning what they're saying. What I'm saying, what us as an entrepreneur, some of the things that I've seen holding us back is, they have tunnel vision, politicians. They know they are going for re-election. And re-election requires cash. Then require morality, then require execution plan. It's just cash. So he is aware about how he's studied. So there's something that they are doing there, as long as they are being re-elected. There's something they have figured. What can we, as us entrepreneurs, we're not going to, and let me just be sad. So the young baby I'm raising now.
Literal baby.
It's agri-tech. We're doing market linkages for farmers. And I'm not going to tell you why. The problem we have is not politicians. So one or the other, I was pulled into a study and we found that there are 7 intermediaries on fresh produce in Kenya between the farmer and the consumer. 7. And what that has happened is that the price point, the farmer, there are very few value chains where the farmer has even passed 8%. Most of them is 5 to 7.
That's margin.
No, let me just say this. So if you are buying a watermelon for 1,000 bob, 70 bob is going to the farmer. This is the reality in our country. And why is that? Because people have learned to take advantage. But now, let me show you where the problem is. So we have a platform which we're able to at least jump to 3 intermediaries, and get some 2 brokers and reduce, and then pass the margin back to the farmer. What has been the block? You go and tell the farmer, you are getting 70 bob for a watermelon. I can get you to 300. If you just use this thing, by evening, you'll get your 300. His first reaction is, Ebu, first bring that. Let's bring that 300 first before you tell me anything. No. That girl over there will pay you if you just give this or give this girl 70. To a fault, they all go to the 70 guy. They do not, because they have been conned so many times. And then deep down when you ask them, okay, here are the papers that are not con. The first thing they go back to is, you, if you can see this money, why aren't you planting and selling to yourself? Like this is where, so when you find the corruption is so entrenched in a basic transaction like selling potatoes. It's so entrenched in us. Like, so for example, do you know you can't just drive into, you can't pack a pile of watermelon into a truck and drive into the market and sell it. You can't. They are gatekeepers, very serious one. You can't just walk into a school. So if the school signs, if you don't have the basa in your side, there is no way you're going to sell to a school. If you can't, if you sell, say, to an institution, you're selling to a hospital, your check will be written, never signed, or signed, never released. There are very many, like, how do I say? This is us. From the producer to the guys in between, to the guys receiving. We have institutionalized this thing so much that when you go to help people, people are even skeptical. Why are you helping us? What's in it for you? And we have broken that as a community, and that's what the politicians have read into. And for me, and this is why you find right now, as somebody here said, the contracts we sign, where do you execute them? Where do you influence them? Where is the redress? I hate to say, and I tell entrepreneurs, we are busy forcing people to sign NDAs. Where would you take that NDA? Tell me today. Where can you take an NDA? Which court is Milimani? Where is this you take an NDA? Some of these things, you need to understand that it's a cultural problem. But then now, on short term, what politicians have done is innovate around our culture. On long term, I think we need to have and be the guys at the front. This thing you're doing very nobly, Mike, and we just say, can we find a way to, it's like the way the states have done it, legalize commission. Be very clear, these are the commission, and be open about it. Because a businessman is then able to plan that if I'm pricing to sell potatoes to a school, we need Basar's commission, headmaster's commission, chairman of the board commission. Because you're all doing it anyway. So why not put it in my pricing the way I put VAT? It's because this is us. It's not politicians. There is no way. Let me tell you, even where we are right now, if they came here with a lorry of potatoes, and they're the best potatoes they have ever seen, they're not going to take it. There's an accountant I have to go and see somewhere. And a captain and a chair. This is our culture. This is what we call hustling. But this is us. It's not politicians. I took somebody to hospital the other day. And the only way you can get speedy movement is to get a guard to take you to the front. That guard is not taking you for free. Otherwise, you'll be in the queue for 2 hours. This is us. So I think we innovate around it, short term, put it in the long term. Because it's us. I don't think it's politicians, it's us.
Something you've said that has just rung me. You've said that we need to innovate around this. And for me, I would summarize that by saying systems beat sacrifice. So success is not about how much pain you can endure, okay? But how well you can design out the chaos, okay? So what you're saying is we build frameworks, okay? Not just willpower. Because what you're saying, by automating, by agreeing that this is a commission structure, you've just created structures, you've created systems,
process,
and you've removed your willpower from fighting what is already happening. So we're saying we can as well just agree
but at that point,
systems beat sacrifice, because what sacrifice?
Let me tell you, at that point where we come to, so when I look at, say, lobbying, when you come to a point where you say, look, lobbying is there, it is going to happen. Companies need to move government to do policy. The only way that is done is cash. I'm not being defeatist, but I've really struggled with. It's very difficult to fight culture. It's really a societal culture. It's extremely difficult to get your business trying to push back on culture. So the people who are watching us, everyone, most of the people we're doing are in the middle of a deal. In that deal, there's some facilitation happening. That is the truth. We are all doing it. I don't know anyone who just replied to a tender, was awarded, responded with product, and a check was sent back. That realm does not exist. So we have to figure a way to flow with that, but put some structure in it to a level where we say everything is 10% commission. It's almost like, it's a very far topic. Prostitution is as old as the Bible, right? You can deny it, but people have been buying sex
The oldest career.
for a very long time. And the countries that figured that out just put legislation around it. As we're in the deny prostitution thing, we've formed it, we've renamed it now, it's called small girl, big God, whatever we are calling it these days. You know? Small girl, big God. You don't see them.
I left it at women of the night.
Don't know them.
Ladies of the night.
You don't know small girl, big God.
No.
You know, when people are just miraculously making money, you know what they're doing.
Yeah.
We all know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Mike, how long have we worked before we could even afford to just sit the way we are seated here? And people miraculously, to Instagram posts, they have a Range Rover. This thing, you know what is happening, right? So, you know, we can deny this thing. You can deny prostitution. And you can say it is immoral, it's unchristian, it is all the things. But I can tell you, it is happening heavily. So do you deny, do you pontificate, or do you go and say, you know what, we're going to register all sex workers? Just like the thing in the Netherlands. And you guys, you're going to have rights, you're going to whatever, you're going to have operating hours, operating districts, you can only operate whatever. It's what... I don't think you can change humanity. You can't change culture. So right now, and I'm saying this, I can't bring my sack of... If I bring my potatoes here, the sourcing commission or the committee needs to bring in the BASA, the chairman and the chairman of the board, and they say 10%. You guys decide.
But we'll come to you as we close. All of us will have to do what we call reflection moments. But I want to know if this is your final position. There's ideation, but what moving on from here? We know we talked what Suzie said earlier. She said it's going to be like a shrink kind of setup, which is fine, but we still need to live with a position. So coming back to you guys, I ask those questions. What now are you? What are your reflective thoughts out of this, over and above? What, having spent time today giving this a little some level of thought? What is your thought process? Like, for instance, I don't believe you have to suffer. I don't think you have to you should not glorify suffering.
Yes.
Because sometimes this entrepreneurship is like we're glorifying suffering. You wake up every morning, yeah? Do you have to suffer to succeed?
So, yeah.
Is pain a proof of purpose?
So I'll answer this, and I'll also give her some hope based on our history as a country. If you look at like our country from my grandfather, my grandfather was born in the 1890s. My dad was born in the 40s. My grandfather was born into colonial, we were becoming a colony, and lived to be an independent citizen. Like I've seen his passbook, his physical passbook from the colonial era. My dad was born into colonial Kenya. Lived to, work for he was a civil servant in the first post-colonial government. And I was born some years before multipartyism. So if you look at that shift that happened over like an 80-something year period, we've moved from colonized country to, colonized territory to sort of partially independent colonized, as in separate colonized territory with sort of some own internal structural legislation to independence. And I grew up, like I spent most of us have spent our adult life in a democratic Kenya. And so you move from 1992 when we finally had elections. We then had a period with IPPG and all of this, which is what led to the 2010 constitution. We are progressing. The reality is it's not going to be a shift that we perceive in a decade. It's going to be perceived in a generation. That's how the evolution of the country has happened. Society progresses a grave at a time. It is our parents who have control of all the laws and everything who will slowly die off, who will lead to these new ideas of ours coming to fruition. And if I use Kenya as an example, I am not making this comment because I support anyone. But our current president is the first one who was not in the 1960s Legislative Council or related to somebody in the 1960s Legislative Council. Kenyatta was in the LegCo before independence. Kibaki was there. Daniel Moi was there. Uhuru was the son of the first one. Like, when you think about it, for the past 50 years, we've been ruled by one groupthink. Politics and the situation aside, that is a level of progress. That we finally have somebody. In that period, the US, Obama was born and became president in the US when we were still dealing with these legislative council people, and retired, and we were still dealing with that category. We are progressing. It's not going to be linear, it's going to be generational. So your kids will have a very different experience of Kenya from you. And that's a good thing. On suffering, I do not believe there is dignity in suffering. I do not believe there is dignity in poverty. We tend to glorify hazing entrepreneurs, but when you actually look at the data, entrepreneurs are privileged in terms of network, income, education. I myself realized that even the situations I got into where I could borrow a certain amount of money, I am there because I am privileged. The fact that I had that creditworthiness to go and say, give me X amount of money. And for some people to say, you know what, it's okay if this does not come back. That's privilege. And historically, we tend to ignore. Bill Gates' father was the one who made Starbucks happen. Bill Gates' father was Bill Gates before Bill Gates. For a very long time, he was one of the leading lawyers in Seattle. Mark Zuckerberg, wealthy family. When you start tracking down the most successful entrepreneurs globally, the one thing they have in common is they're generally from fairly wealthy families, or they have a level of privilege that allows them to take these risks without significant consequences. They're not more intelligent, it's nothing. You generally have the ability. I'm not saying you were born into it, but you are now in a position where rolling the dice for entrepreneurship is not going to end your life. And you also have the others who do it purely because, I'm in Kibra, I can't find work, I'll start a shop, I'll start hawking. That's a very different category because people are just trying to survive. They have no grand ambitions. It's, I need a meal today, and I'll do whatever is required to have dinner at 6 p.m. But for most of the other people, there's a level of privilege. And generally, stress has been found to reduce cognitive function. So literally, when an entrepreneur is drowning without capital, they are objectively dumber. Like, you can't function, you can't achieve everything you want. So this idea that this suffering produces diamonds is objectively hogwash. Help entrepreneurs get rid of their problems, they will thrive. This idea that it's somehow some military boot camp, you're not invading Poland. You know, the Nazi period ended. Hitler died. Why are we trying to recreate that?
Amazing. Very good. So you've said you're not going to suffer anymore.
Why? If I wanted to suffer, okay, look, the people who want to suffer, you want mortification, I'd become a priest. I'd go somewhere. But the idea is to create value, not pain. Why think about the logic of punishing the very people you are depending on to create value in your economy. You're looking at entrepreneurs and you're like, you're the source of jobs, source of innovation, source of export, source of all these things. But you know what? We are going to make it hard for you to create a better world for us. How does that make sense?
One thing you said, like in my experience, and the more I go, and hats off to you, Suzie, for pulling off a B2C and even getting to exit. Because it's one of the things that I've learned, like really hats off to you.
Thank you.
Starting a business in Kenya, and I don't want us to stand around here and keep saying, oh, this what's everything wrong. But I can tell you, for those who've not started a business, starting a business in Kenya is like going to war with the government. It's an intention of declaring war with the government, because you come with such ideas to help community grow and thrive. And the minute the government catches on in it, the first thing they do is attack you. As I told you, I'm doing market linking, so we're doing one locally and export.
Yeah.
The privilege of getting an export license costs 10,000 shillings. To get that license, don't joke. And it's there. And immediately the roadblocks you kind of see around, just as something as simple as picking a product, putting it in an aeroplane or a ship and dropping it. No other value add other than carrying it. Logistics is the only value add. It's the gatekeepers who are the government are fighting you to make sure you don't do it. And this is the funny part. So, for example, one of the things we are pushing is basil. Basil is being bought now, so the gatekeepers are buying it from the farmers at 250 shillings. And it's landing in Europe, same day, 24 hours, at €7. Same crop, plant. €7 is like what? 1,000 what? 1,000. And you try and study, and the thing is that the license to export this thing. So you're like, why wouldn't the farmer just get the 10,000 license, put it on a plane, and get €7? Then you learn who is fighting you.
Gatekeepers.
Yes, and they have entrenched. Of course, you push. And as I say, so you'll find the privileged are the ones who will make a phone call and the license will quickly be sent. So for example, and then they create policies. So for example, if you want to export macadamia, the license says you must own a factory. Why? Because some guy somewhere, and I don't want to point fingers, but these are the realities. So what happens? All macadamia have to go through some guys for it to go. And when you see the way it jumps, and I tell you, you'd assume it's 2 to 3x. This is 6, 7, 8x on logistics. On logistics purely. No value add, no washing, no nothing. Just moving it, carrying it there. And so you say maybe export is a risky market. You are watching potatoes leave at 40 shillings highest farm gate, and you'd be very lucky if you get 100 bob right now coming into retail, and all it's doing is being carried. And so you find we have accepted a system which beats anyone trying to get into business, is at war with the system itself. I say, look, maybe we start just by us, the 81 people you're trying to put together, and the only pain you should suffer is by refusing to deal with the gatekeepers. Use whatever network, whatever noise. Make sure. I wish I could go and get every farmer an export license in this country. Like, these are things you cannot. You're like, here it is. Just sell, and it's not even export. Just here in Nairobi, get a truck, carry, drop your thing in Palamari. Cannot understand.
You're talking about export.
Yes.
I deal with import. I'll just give you one quick example. A product I imported a few months ago. Let's give it a number. I paid 1 million shillings for the many pieces of product. to get it here, I was being charged 1.7 million.
For a 1 million product.
Yeah.
What? Duty or what?
Duty, the VAT, I don't know.
So are we saying that?
a million
Are we saying that
things.
the overhead energy that we consume that takes us round and round is the gatekeeping we have to deal with?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we are saying the gatekeepers are the ones that we are constantly working in this loop, and the only people we are enriching are gatekeepers
Yes.
who don't significantly put any capital on the table,
Yes.
but they're just gatekeepers. Exactly.
And who
Exactly.
and who elects politicians? The gatekeepers. So if you look, the people who've been gatekeeping have never changed, regardless of the president. The guy who issues you. So, for example, to put up a structure like this, you have to go and get a permit. That permit guy is the guy, not the governor. Not leave those ones. Those are the ones for making noise over here. There's a guy who give you that permit for a building to go up. And it will not go up.
But now moving forward, because as we now look at, we can be here and we've done great. I think we need to look at, I would like you guys to give me, what's your closing position? If you just say one thing that your daughter or son will remember tomorrow out of this, what would that be?
Don't be afraid to be an entrepreneur. Passion, perseverance, patience are very important. So, know your space and work on it. And don't worry about it's not suffering. It's not suffering. At the end of the day, when your business takes shape and works out, there's nothing better. There's no better feeling.
I think for me, I'll say it in two parts. Because what I really wanted to say today when I came here is I want to encourage every entrepreneur, and my children included. You need to learn to leave profit on the table. What we had said earlier. Not every opportunity to make money is yours. And learn. So, for example, these gentlemen here are doing a fantastic job filming us and setting up this place. So if I hear of a gig to where somebody is offering a million bob to do the recording, it is not my space to start a production house. It is my space to say, I remember Mike introduced me to some good guys, and I pass it, and I don't need to have a cut. Because we are all connected. It is in them when they're recording the expert podcast, they say, what? Have you met George? George is the guy. He's the guy doing linkages for market. This is the way this thing works. So most of why we feel like we're in a permanent loop is that we think that, so I start this business, but then because I bump into a production opportunity, I start a production house. In the middle of transporting the production equipment, I start a transport business. So if you ask every entrepreneur, he has 6 businesses, which are doing nothing. And it's all, and I can tell you, distraction is the loss of attraction of money to your business. Your business stops attracting money the minute you become distracted by another one. So my market linkages business, because I only have 24 hours, is losing 2 hours to a production business that I have no business doing. And suddenly I have a logistics business somewhere there. If you want to stop hustling, the best thing you can do is pick one fight. No, people say multiple entrepreneurs. Multiple entrepreneurs, if you look, there's one business that made money. Then out of the money that came out, it enabled him to replicate and kick up other business. But how do I say? There must be a first wife. There's a second wife. You can't go for both of them.
I think we should put full stop.
Full stop.
Sasa tuendelee. My friend.
Yes.
Kariuki.
Yes.
What was that statement?
Supporting entrepreneurs is celebrating their failure. We need to make it easier for people to course correct. If I start a business and find that, the market has shifted, we still have stigma in Kenya. When your business fails, you're sort of tagged with the failure. To date, I am referred to in reference to my first 2 startups. So people have forgotten what I do now. And they still refer to me with regards to a startup I was in for 2 years, and I was in for 4 years, and I've been out of that space for 5 years. Those are what define me. And there's an aphorism again, somebody who finds himself in a leaky boat, at times it makes more sense to jump into a boat that's not sinking. We shouldn't sacrifice people's careers, incomes, and futures because you're here for a finite period. Average Kenyan lives to 62. I checked yesterday, that's our average mortality. Somebody will take 20 years to build a business. That's 20 years, that's 30% of their lived existence in the country. We need to look at that sacrifice and reward it for what it is. Because the sort of risks you're taking and the sort of costs you bear from reputation to income. People never talk about the people who started businesses, who became impoverished. Somebody who put a lien on their house to start a business because they got a government tender. Government tender didn't work out. The house was sold. They became homeless. The family left them. Effectively, you see them on the side of the road at a very high cost, and all they did to do was dare and have a dream. That cost is a little too high in this market, and it needs to be addressed. And we need to be kinder to people who try, because it's through these experiments that we have the world we live in today. It's those who dare, who succeed, who build the world we experience, not those who sit on the sidelines and criticize. Anyone has an opinion. Not anyone can do.
Fantastic. And I think as we close, and I also look at my self-reflection, which I'm going to come to, is I just want to sort of to recognize Suzie. Suzie, I think you're much younger than me, and when I look at this book, I think right now I've just sort of flipped through, and to a large extent, I can almost relate to some of the conversations you were saying earlier. So I can see here, part 2, moving back home. We sometimes wait too long when we're almost retired to write about our stories. We are here because we've chosen to say our stories before we are too old even to sit here for 2.5 hours, because you may at some point not even be able to sit here for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and not want to go to the washroom 5 times. Right now, I think the situation that you've been able to pull this book, and the other day, I saw this. What did I say? I saw somebody this book. And then I say, hey, Suzie has written a book. I'm so happy that at least she's begun to document her life. And you'd be surprised, this is just part 1 of your life. In the next 15 or 10 years, you're going to write a lot because you're going to have even more clarity of engagement. So I'd like you guys, and I would like to thank you for bringing this book, and I would like you to at least sign it for me.
Yes.
As I close. And this is the book from Suzie. Suzie has done well. I'm very, very impressed because all of us have to. And my hope is that we have 40 shows to run. If we take 3 entrepreneurs per show, it's 120 entrepreneurs plus myself, 121 entrepreneurs that will be featured in our conversation. I'm almost certain that out of these 121 entrepreneurs who are going to put themselves out there, you're guaranteed in the next 10 years there'll be significant players in this market because of what you stood to do here. Because somebody's going to say, that George is very smart. Maybe we should bring him in agriculture to help us because he's got clarity in manufacturing. Because sometimes, and I would even pity being in leadership, senior leadership, because sometimes you think about it. You take a leadership position, you think about where do I get people who have got the passion to help me change a country. You'd really be stressed. Do you put them through a CV wiring process? What do you do? Because it has to come from the heart, right? Some people may want that job to become gatekeepers. Now, how many people do you know you're going to look out there and say, this person is not going to be a good gatekeeper? They really believe what they're trying to do. I think it starts with us showing up. Is that correct? So this is Suzie Beauty's book, Suzie Wokabi's book. I call her Suzie, but she has said, no, she has keep on saying beauty. I think she's a beautiful lady. So a beautiful journey. Is it? A beautiful. A beautiful journey. Mm-hmm. A beautiful journey. I think all of us should sort of read this book. Now, as I close, my take is, and Suzie, please, idea hapa.
Gladly.
Idea hapa. Andika hapo Founders Battlefield. I was in the arena with this gentleman. Now, finally, as we close, for me, my take home out of this is I am clear that I don't have to suffer and be in the rat race every day to say that I'm accomplishing something. I no longer have that anxiousness or what we call that level of, there's that feeling of your stomach is churning. When everybody's in the street in the morning at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rushing, traffic, and you're sitting somewhere in a balcony thinking, why am I not in the traffic? I no longer have that guilt. I just say everybody has their hustle, but I'm not in that street today. I will choose my journey, right? And that comes in two ways. Learning to understand what I'm very good at. So I don't do what I'm not good at. I'm 50, I've said that one I don't know how to do. But I'm also so excited. Learning to unlearn a lot of stuff. And AI, artificial intelligence, has allowed me to finally realize I'm not crazy. I wake up in the morning, I think, my God, I need to understand this better. I don't have to call somebody who I think understands finance, understands economics, understands coding. I just go to an AI platform. I say, what do you think about these 5 things? And the response it gives me, I build on it. So I tell you nowadays, I think generally I'm up by 3 o'clock. And I'm loving my life nowadays because I have almost fallen in love with AI tools. I challenge myself every day on that tool. I say, what if you could think like this? Right? The episode we've shot today, if I take the transcript and feed it, I told you guys earlier, and tell it, summarize for me by creating for me a conceptual model of what we've just talked about, it will build this. Earlier, I would have had to have college students go to Suzie University, tell guys, let's study this, bring whatever. All that stuff is already seated somewhere with that information. So today, what it tells me is that there's some work I know I need human beings. There's some work you need to unlearn to realize you don't need human beings. What you need is capacity to unlearn, so you're not caught up in the loop. So that I'm not sitting with Austin every day trying to tell Austin, are you going to finish for me this video production? Are you going to finish for me? Where are you? Did you come to work yesterday? Are you going to finish this for me? I tell Austin, Baba, if at this rate, the way you're operating, I will be shooting this thing. I'll be putting in AI. I'll have my video. Watch them check. And that's why we need to agree. That's where we are headed. That's the reality, whether you like it or not, right? So it's to say, I no longer have that anxiousness to figure out that this guy who is meant to be working with me, I have to keep on chaperoning him. Begging him, are you waking up? Are you going to be here? I've realized AI is coming to a point where I need to ask ourselves, what can AI do? How can AI remove from me load? Think about it. I don't even need a PA. In my earlier life, I had a PA, I had a chief of staff, I had an analyst. So that's now. Kila kitu is done for me. I do. I just go, hey, tell me. So it means there's a whole new future. And it's us who are going to embrace it. The people are going to embrace it that are going to eventually, are going to start realizing that taking rest is going to be a strategy in itself and not a reward. So I'll be, at some point, be intentional about me being in a more calmer state because I have got tools available for me to work. And with that, I would like to thank everybody, you guys, everybody. I think this was very interesting. We've taken, I think, the longest show we've had.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, because it's 2 hours, 45 minutes.
What?
Wow.
Yes, yeah. And you still could not even stop it. Yeah, so I guess we're where we are.
I didn't even finish my part 3. But
Part 3.
next time.
Next time. So it means we need you for a different show.
Yeah.
Because you also need to understand the impact this hustling does to your family, to your mental state. Okay? Sometimes you can even realize, are you normal, right? To your health, right? There's a significant other challenges that this brings to the table. Is that correct? Your mental well-being, your health, you understand. You can become anxious. You consume substance. You start drinking too much alcohol because you're anxious. You're feeling, you're tired. You're pushing your body beyond what it can possibly handle. But again, those are going to be conversations you're going to talk about in the future. So I'd like to thank everybody and thank you guys. Thank you for really coming to this. But also thanks our audience and everybody who's following us. And everybody calls me. I receive very many phone calls on a daily basis. People I meet in the streets who tell me, look, Mike, listening to Suzie or listening to Kariuki or George Ikua was like, it made my day. So it looks we're making a difference. And we are part of changing a country and a continent. It's about showing up and being able to be authentic about the stories we tell. So until next time, thank you and God bless you.